In this lecture, we are going to review the ABC model. But before we do that, answer this question. How often have you asked yourself, why did I do that? Or, why did my partner behave this way while we were out the other night? Or, why is she wearing that? People are fascinated by why questions about human behavior, and psychologists have developed theories or models to explain human behavior. According to the behavioral model, a person's behaviors are caused by present events that occur before and after the behaviors have been performed. In the ABC model, the A stands for antecedents, the B is behavior, and the C is consequence. Antecedents are events that occur or are present before the person performs the behavior. Consequences, on the other hand, are events that occur after and as a result of the behavior. For example, feeling tired is an antecedent for sleeping, and feeling rested the next day is a consequence of sleeping. Now, let us review the ABC model. The ABC model describes the temporal sequence of antecedents, behavior, and consequences. The specific antecedents and consequences that cause an individual to perform a behavior are its maintaining conditions. Now, not all antecedents and consequences of a behavior are its maintaining conditions. Only a relatively small number of antecedents and consequences maintain, or rather influence, a cause, a behavior. And we refer to these maintaining antecedents and maintaining consequences. Let's talk about maintaining antecedents. There are two categories of maintaining antecedents. They are prerequisites and stimulus control, and both can occur naturally or can be introduced intentionally to change a behavior. To engage in a behavior, you must have the requisite knowledge, skills, and resources. For example, going to the movies requires knowing where the theater is located and what time the movie starts, being able to get to the theater, and having enough money to pay for a ticket. If these prerequisites seem trivial, consider whether you could go to a movie without them. Now, stimulus control involves cues or conditions that set the stage for behaviors to occur. There are two types of stimulus control: prompts and set-in events. Prompts are cues to perform a behavior, such as when a parent says, "Go and wash your hands," to a child before dinner. Set-in events are environmental conditions that elicit a behavior. They are broader and more complex than prompts. Set-in events may include who is present and what they are doing, the time of day, and the physical arrangement of the environment. For example, you are more likely to study for a test if you are in a quiet room with others who are studying than if you were in a room where people were socializing. Think about how your behavior differs when you are in class or at a party or with close friends and even with strangers. Each of these set-in events elicits different behaviors. I know that you act differently when you're with your friends or parents versus when you are with your significant other. People frequently alter certain events in their daily lives to influence their own behaviors. For instance, a woman wishing to lose weight and improve her health might remove all high-fat foods from her house and keep healthy foods prominently displayed. Behavior therapists use both prompts and certain events in therapy to change clients' problem behaviors. You could do the same for your relationships. You could actually use both prompts and certain events in your relationships to change the problematic behaviors that exist within the relationship. Now let's move on to maintaining consequences. Whereas maintaining antecedents are responsible for behaviors being performed in the first place, maintaining consequences determine whether the behavior will occur again. In general, when the consequences of performing a behavior are favorable, the individual is more likely to repeat the behavior. Okay, let me say this again. This is primarily the secret weapon in behaviorism. Ready? When the consequences of performing a behavior are favorable, the individual is more likely to repeat the behavior. Now, I want you to think of a particular thing that you would like your significant other to do. And now think of a favorable consequence to that behavior. And listen closely. When the consequence of performing a behavior are favorable, the individual is more likely to repeat the behavior. Sounds like magic, right? But go ahead and try it. Now, unfavorable consequences make it less likely that the person will engage in the behavior in the future. Consequences include what happens directly to the person, to other people, and to the physical environment as a result of the behavior itself. Consequences can be immediate or delayed, and they can be short-term or long-term. You may be wondering how events that occur after a behavior has been performed can influence that behavior. In fact, the actual consequences of a behavior can influence only the future occurrence of the behavior. However, a person's expectations about the probability consequences influence whether a person will perform a behavior in the present. These expectations are antecedents. In other words, a person's prediction about what is likely to happen as a result of performing a particular behavior is one factor that determines whether the person will perform the behavior. Our expectations about the maintaining consequences of our actions are highly a product of the consequences we have experienced for similar behaviors in the past. Maintaining consequences for today's actions are the maintaining antecedents of tomorrow's behavior. Now, let's talk about identifying, maintaining antecedents and consequences. Contrary to the popular misconception, behavior therapy does not directly change symptoms or problem behaviors. Behavior therapy treats problem behaviors by directly changing their maintaining conditions. And before the maintaining conditions can be changed, they first must be identified. So if you want to change a behavior in your partner, you first have to identify the maintaining conditions. And before the maintaining conditions can be changed, they first must be identified. This process begins by identifying all antecedents and consequences of the behavior, some of which are its maintaining conditions. In behavior therapy, the therapist and client identify those antecedents and consequences that are likely to be influencing, or rather causing, the problemed behavior. It is these probable maintaining conditions of a behavior that are changed to modify the problem behavior. So according to the behavioral model, present conditions cause our current behaviors. But what role do our past experiences play in determining our current behaviors? The answer is that past events only indirectly influence present behaviors. The factors that directly cause present behaviors are occurring now in the present. Now, let's look at a personal example. When was the last time you dressed yourself? Unless you are lounging at home in your pajamas, the answer probably is sometime earlier today. In fact, you dress yourself one or more times a day, every day. What are the maintaining conditions of dressing yourself? The maintaining antecedents may include knowing how to dress yourself, having clothes, waking up in the morning, and anticipating going somewhere outside your home. The maintaining consequences may include feeling properly dressed, being complimented on your attire, and not getting arrested for indecent exposure. Let's move on to environment and learning versus biology and hereditary. All our behaviors, including the abnormal behaviors treated in behavior therapy, develop and are maintained by both biology factors and environmental or learning factors. Learning is the process by which environmental factors influence behaviors. The environment comprises all external influences on behaviors, including the physical setting and conditions, as well as the people who are present. Behavior therapy treats problem behaviors by directly changing their maintaining conditions, not the symptoms or problem behaviors themselves. The past originating conditions of a behavior, those conditions that account for its initial development, have only an indirect influence on our present behaviors. Our behaviors are situation specific. They are consistent in the same or similar situations and vary in different situations. Although behavior therapy manipulates learning environmental factors to change problem behaviors, it is acceptable to change in problem behaviors that are predominantly caused by biological factors. One's environment, covert behaviors, and overt behaviors are determined. Each factor influences and is influenced by the other two factors. So I ask you again, how often have you asked yourself, why did I do that? Or why did he do that? Or why do people behave the way they do? According to the behavioral model, a person's behaviors are caused by present events that occur before and after the behaviors have been performed. And in the ABC model, the A is for antecedents, which are events that occur or are present before the person performs the behavior. And the B is the behavior. And the C is the consequence. And consequence are events that occur after and as a result of the behavior.